All right, picture this. You're working with some seriously powerful machinery. What's the one thing standing between you and, well, a whole lot of unexpected force? The answer is surprisingly simple: a lock, a tag, and a procedure. So today, we're going to break down lockout/tagout. This is a critical OSHA standard, and it's all about giving you control over hazardous energy and ultimately your own safety. And really, it all boils down to this simple but incredibly powerful sentence. This isn't just some nice thought, you know? It is the fundamental promise of the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. This single right is the foundation for absolutely everything we're about to talk about. Okay, so let's really unpack what that right actually means in practice. I mean, how does a law that was passed decades ago still protect you on the job today? This right here, this is the heart of the law. It's often called the General Duty Clause. Think of it like a catch-all that says your employer has a direct, active responsibility to find and fix known dangers. It's not enough for them to just tell you to be careful. No way. They have to proactively make the workplace safe. But that's the real question, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to have this broad, general right to safety, but how does that actually translate into a specific life-saving action when you're the one about to stick your hands into a machine that could start up at any second? Well, the answer is a very specific OSHA standard, 1910.147. You probably know it as lockout/tagout, or just LOTO. This is where that big, broad right to safety gets down to the nitty-gritty. So, before you can control something, you gotta know what you're dealing with, right? And hazardous energy, well, it's not just electricity. Think about the massive pressure in a hydraulic line, or the tension coiled up in a big spring. It could be the intense heat in a steam pipe, or even just the raw force of gravity on a heavy piece of equipment that's been lifted up. Basically, it's any kind of stored energy that could be released unexpectedly and cause some serious harm. And the key word here, the one you really have to focus on, is unexpected. LOTO is designed for exactly those moments. You know, you think the machine is off, but then a coworker somewhere else flips a switch, or there's a short circuit, or some of that stored pressure we just talked about gets released. It's all about eliminating those catastrophic surprises. All right, so let's get into the actual procedure itself. And I want to be super clear here. This isn't just a set of friendly suggestions. This is a mandatory, life-saving sequence of steps. Getting this right every single time is absolutely non-negotiable. Okay, so this 6-step sequence is like the ultimate safety checklist, and you have to follow it in order. It's got a really logical flow. First, you prepare for the shutdown. Then you actually shut down the machine. Step 3, you isolate it from its energy source. Then you apply your own personal lock and tag. After that, you've got to deal with any stored up energy. And only then, after all that, can you move on to the final and honestly the most critical step. And that step is verification. Seriously, this is the moment of truth. After you've done everything else, you must physically try to start the machine. Yep, you literally push the on button or try to activate the equipment. You're trying to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that all the energy is gone. This is your final, okay, it's safe, before you start the real work. So following that procedure is absolutely essential, but it's not the whole story. You also need the right tools for the job, and of course, the right training to use them. And it's really important to get the difference between these two. A lockout is a physical barrier. Think of a padlock on a circuit breaker that makes it physically impossible to flip that switch on. A tagout, on the other hand, is basically just a warning sign. Now, tags have their place, but OSHA is pretty clear. You need to use a physical lock whenever you possibly can. Why? Because a warning can be ignored, but a lock, well, a lock can't. And you can't just grab any old padlock from your gym bag. Nope, these devices have to meet 4 key requirements. First, they've got to be durable, tough enough for an industrial environment. They also have to be standardized, so everyone on site instantly recognizes what it is. They need to be substantial, meaning you can't just accidentally knock it off. And finally, they have to be identifiable. It needs to have your name on it so everyone knows exactly who is in control of that piece of equipment. And providing the right training, that's on your employer. And look, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Authorized employees, the folks actually applying the locks, they get super detailed training. Then you have affected employees, the people who operate the machines. they need to understand what's going on. And even other employees who just work in the area are taught one simple rule: don't touch this stuff. The point is, everyone has a specific role to play. So this all brings us right back to where we started. Knowing the LOTO procedure is obviously critical, but knowing your rights under the law, that's what gives you the power to make sure it's actually being followed. Think of these as your personal safety toolkit. You have a right to training that you can actually understand, not some manual filled with jargon nobody gets. You have the right to see records about past injuries and illnesses. And you have a really powerful right to file a confidential complaint with OSHA if you think something's wrong. And you should know it doesn't matter where you are in the US, you're covered. Some states are under federal OSHA and others have their own approved state-level plans. But either way, these fundamental rights and protections, they apply to you. And this is huge, so listen up. The law is on your side. If you speak up about a hazard or you insist that the proper LOTO procedure is used, your employer cannot legally retaliate against you. That means they can't fire you, they can't demote you, they can't cut your hours, nothing. These are called whistleblower protections, and they exist for one reason, so you can speak up without being afraid. So knowing your rights is absolutely the first step. But the next step, well, that's using them. Because understanding a procedure like lockout/tagout isn't just about checking a box or following a rule. It's about taking control. It's about using your voice, and it's about exercising your fundamental right to go home safe at the end of every single workday.